My name is Samuel Blackwood, and I've spent the better part of my life investigating the paranormal. I've delved into haunted houses, explored eerie forests, and confronted restless spirits, but nothing could have prepared me for the chilling case of the haunted lighthouse on Beacon Isle, a case that would take me to the edge of the supernatural and reveal a dark and tragic history. The call had come in late one stormy night, a desperate plea from the keepers of the lighthouse on Beacon Isle. They spoke of mysterious noises, unexplained shadows, and an overwhelming sense of dread that had settled over the island. They had tried everything to rid the lighthouse of its malevolent presence, but their efforts had been in vain. It was a case that cried out for my expertise. As I approached the island, the lighthouse stood tall and foreboding against the gray, overcast sky. Its beacon had long since been extinguished, its once proud tower now a dark and silent sentinel. The island itself seemed to be shrouded in an eerie mist, as if it were concealing its own secrets. I was met by the keepers of the lighthouse, a husband and wife, their faces etched with fear and exhaustion. They welcomed me into the small living quarters attached to the lighthouse, their voices trembling as they recounted their experiences. It started with strange sounds, the husband, John, explained. Footsteps on the stairs, whispering voices in the dead of night. We thought it was just our imagination at first. His wife, Sarah, nodded in agreement, but then things took a darker turn. We saw shadows moving in the corners of our vision, and the temperature would plummet for no reason. And the dreams, Mr. Blackwood, the dreams were the worst part. They described dreams of drowning at sea, of being trapped in the lighthouse as it crumbled into the ocean, and of faces in the water, contorted in agony. It was clear that something malevolent lurked within the lighthouse, something that sought to torment those who dared to enter. I began my investigation, setting up equipment to record audio and video, hoping to capture evidence of the paranormal activity that plagued Beacon Isle. As the sun set and darkness settled over the island, I felt a growing sense of unease. It was as if the very air around me was charged with an otherworldly energy. As I explored the lighthouse, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Shadows danced on the walls, and I could hear faint whispers in the stillness of the night. The temperature dropped suddenly, and I could see my breath in the frigid air. It was in the lighthouse's tower that I encountered the first sign of the supernatural. A flickering light appeared at the top of the staircase, and I could hear the sound of heavy footsteps ascending. I followed cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. At the top of the tower, I found myself face to face with a spectral figure, a woman dressed in a tattered white gown, her eyes filled with sadness and longing. She reached out to me, her hand passing through mine, as if she were trying to make contact. I could feel her presence, her energy, and I knew that she was one of the restless spirits that haunted the lighthouse. But there was more to her story, a tragic history that had bound her to this place. Over the course of my investigation, I uncovered the dark and heartbreaking history of Beacon Isle. The lighthouse had once been a place of refuge for sailors, guiding them safely through treacherous waters. But it had also been the site of a terrible tragedy, a shipwreck that had claimed the lives of many, including the woman I had encountered. Her name was Eleanor, and she had been a young woman engaged to a sailor named Samuel. On that fateful night, Samuel's ship had been caught in a violent storm, and Eleanor had lit the lighthouse's beacon in a desperate attempt to guide him home. But the ship had foundered, and Samuel had perished at sea. Eleanor's grief had been overwhelming, and she had never recovered from the loss of her beloved. She had spent the rest of her days tending to the lighthouse, her spirit bound to the tower by her sorrow and guilt. It was her restless spirit that had been tormenting the keepers of the lighthouse, seeking to communicate her pain and longing. As I delved deeper into the history of Beacon Isle, I uncovered more tragic stories, of sailors lost at sea, of families torn apart, and of lives cut short by the unforgiving ocean. The island itself seemed to hold the weight of these stories, as if the very land had been scarred by the tragedies of the past. Determined to help the restless spirits find peace, I conducted a séance in the lighthouse's tower, inviting the spirits to make their presence known and to communicate their pain. It was a solemn and haunting experience, as the voices of the departed echoed in the darkness. Eleanor's spirit appeared once more, her form bathed in a soft, ethereal light. She spoke of her love for Samuel, of her grief and guilt over his death, and of her longing to be reunited with him in the afterlife. It was clear that she had been trapped in a state of limbo, unable to move on until her pain had been acknowledged and her story told. With the help of a medium, I facilitated a final farewell between Eleanor and Samuel, allowing them to communicate one last time. It was a heartbreaking and cathartic moment, as their spirits embraced, their love transcending the boundaries of life and death. As the spirits of Beacon Isle found closure and peace, the malevolent activity that had plagued the lighthouse began to subside. The temperature stabilized, and the eerie shadows ceased their dance on the walls. The island itself seemed to sigh in relief, as if the weight of its tragic history had been lifted. In the end, my investigation into the haunted lighthouse on Beacon Isle had uncovered not only the supernatural, but also the deeply human stories of love, loss, and longing. It was a case that had tested my resolve as a paranormal investigator, but it had also reaffirmed my belief in the power of compassion and understanding to bring peace to those who had been trapped in the liminal spaces between life and death.